Monday's big question. We just took in a whole weekend of MLS Cup playoffs, and something stood out. There was a moment of significant villainy this weekend. Seattle versus Houston. Hector Herrera
I like it. I like
got himself a red card for bashing a guy and then spitting at the ref. Question is, do we need more villains in Major League Soccer?
I think we need personality in MLS. I don't think there's any denying that. I don't know that if we have more villains, that suddenly makes the league so much more compelling, and that is the difference maker for MLS when it comes to popularity necessarily. But man, yeah, at times in its history, and I think you would probably agree with me, Robert, MLS has been pretty boring, right?
It is tame. It can be.
It can be tame. It can be boring. There was a period where every team felt like a carbon copy of the of other teams, right? There wasn't a lot to differentiate, and that had a lot to do with the squad, the mechanisms by which teams could build their squads. There wasn't a lot of leeway within the salary budget. That's obviously changed. We progressed on that front. I think a lot of us would like to see Major League Soccer be more aggressive in those areas. Please, be more aggressive. I know we're talking about this calendar change and whether that's coming. That would certainly be interesting to see how that plays out. But if you are going to do that, and even if you aren't, but if you are going to do that, if you're going to change your calendar and now you are competing for the bulk of your regular season for attention with the NFL, with the biggest sport in this country, with the NBA through that entire period, if you're doing that, you want to have stories that you can tell. You want to have narratives. Now, it's weird as a fan of soccer and as somebody who teaches my kids good manners and wants my kids to be respectful of their opponents. It's weird for me to say, hey, we need more villains. We need more people doing things like what Hector Herrera did in that game yesterday between Houston and Seattle. But I want that stuff. I occasionally, I don't want anybody to go out and to intentionally try to injure an opponent. I don't want bodily harm to be part of this story.
No.
But I definitely think, think about how compelling the Premier League was and how important it was to have Jose Mourinho at Chelsea during an era when the Premier League was on the rise globally, not just because they had good players. They had teams with history like United or Arsenal, but because they had characters and storylines and these things, you had this battle. It was Alex Ferguson versus Jose Mourinho versus Arsene Wenger. I mean, there were constantly things coming out in the media and the press that were interesting. Mourinho was saying crazy things or things that were compelling. He's still doing that. He's doing that in Turkey, trying to turn the Super League into a monster. That stuff we lack. Well, maybe it's fair to say that there are some of those things happening and that the media coverage of the league doesn't allow for it to have the same sort of impact because we're just not there yet on sort of, how much of this is a chicken and an egg problem, Robert, where the more popular the league is, the more these stories get told. And you have these stories, but until the league gets popular, you can't get the coverage. But if the league doesn't have these stories, does the league get popular? Those kind of things are really kind of difficult to know.
Yeah, that's interesting that you put it like that and you kind of put it in that sort of context, because when I was watching it back to try to see the incident more, because Hector Herrera comes driving in, smashes into the Seattle player, and then something off camera happens. Then there's the red card after VAR, and then when in the replay, the YouTube highlights from MLS, they kind of cut the explanation short, not saying whether the red card was due to the foul or due to the sportsmanship of spitting at the referee. And you say, if that is an external highlight package from an ESPN or from a different network, do they dive deep and dig into what the heck is Hector Herrera doing here?
Right.
Because that I mean, it's not a good look. That is dirty. He sneers at the ref and spits at him.
MLS has had a problem for years, and I imagine there's still a little bit of this happening where they are sort of softening the image publicly, or they cut out some of the more controversial things from a highlight package. I mean, this is just protecting the image of the league. In this case, I did find it. I think I found it through OneFootball pretty simply. I don't know, a tweet or something, and it takes me to their website, and it's there. It's the referee after Hector Herrera kicks the Seattle player from behind. There's clearly a foul there. I'm imagining that what happens is he has the interaction with the referee. He walks by the referee. He does what he does. The VAR official is like, yeah, we need to go back and look at this. I think we have a red card incident. They go back because you can't, this is clearly one of those situations where the yellow card is warranted for the foul. It's a kick from behind. It's a pretty clear yellow card by the laws of the game. And then Ache, expressing his disgust, does a what is dissent, essentially. Like, it's dissent to spit at the feet of the referee. It's the other part of this that I love, right? I don't know if he thought in his head, well, I can't spit at the referee. That's clearly really bad. But what I can do is spit towards the feet of the referee and show my disgust like I'm some sort of 17th century landowner who's, gentry, who's upset about I don't know. It's very funny to be like, puh, at the feet of the referee. The referee did say after the review that his red card was because of spitting. I mean, he said the word spitting in his explanation, which is the thing that MLS is doing with the microphone, which we don't get from the Premier League and some of these other competitions. I don't know that I love it every time, but in this case, it was. He got a red card because he spit at the referee, and it was well deserved. And I don't think if you're a Houston fan, you're happy with Hector Herrera today. Like, you're mad at him, you're angry.
Didn't help his team.
Something stupid, but he is now, and who knows what his future looks like in Houston, not just because of this, but because of his age. It is one of those situations where it's like, wow, okay, he's going to get that villainous heat, which he probably already had in a lot of American cities anyway, because of his past.
Certainly.
But this is a story. This is sort of that it feels kind of sordid, but it's part of what makes sports fascinating, that you never know, and that there can always be these kind of things. It's not just the incredible performance that elevates, that lifts us. It can also be the, for lack of a better way of describing it, the sort of basic drama of something like that pro wrestling provides. But in this case, it's completely unscripted. You have no idea that this stuff is going to happen until it does. And then it's like, oh my God, what did he just do? Right? It's Jean de Silva scoring the winner against Miami to push Atlanta to a third game in front of 70,000 and them going bonkers. And then it's also sports and soccer, and our game is also this.
Herrera's behavior and, the villainy that we're describing, it's also part of personality to make it more interesting, and also, pushes the envelope a little bit of what you could possibly get from the league, and maybe just push the league forward in general. That's one of the reasons why people liked Zlatan, was because he was not only an amazing player, but he had some of the dark arts, and he didn't play by the MLS communications rules. Like, he pushed the league, and it kind of like, pointed out the shortcomings.
No, I mean, he's a character, right? He's a cartoon character, Zlatan, but again, you kind of roll with it, partly because he owns it so well. I will say that, when it comes to this kind of stuff on the part of Herrera, it is, again, it's not, if you're running the league, it's not the thing you want to happen, because you think of that as a negative. It is a bad look. It is, we've got players spitting at referees. That's horrible. But now we got to suspend. He's going to be suspended. He's going to miss games to start the year next year for Houston, if and when he comes back. That's going to happen. And that's the right thing from a competitive standpoint. But if we're talking about this from a different level, an entertainment value level, in 2024, when there are so many options, when there's so many things you can go and do, I can sit and scroll through TikTok for 8 hours instead of watching a soccer game, instead of doing anything. But this is the kind of thing that will make TikTok, right? This is the kind of thing that will kind of perhaps break through some of the noise that is out there. And it's not traditionally the way sports were sold, right? You supported your club, your team, your hometown outfit. You wanted them to win. You had that joy or that heartache when it didn't happen. But now, especially now, right, with the talking head shows, and we're one of them, Robert. We're a show that is based on trying to find the compelling things in soccer and talk about them. And if we had a Thomas Tuchel Antonio Conte moment happened in Major League Soccer, we'd be talking about that. Right? If that had happened now, we'd be talking about that. That would be one of our stories of the day. And that makes sports more compelling. You can't force it. It has to be natural. It has to be the kind of thing that players and coaches and the figures around the game do organically, naturally. But when it does happen, man, it makes the league more interesting.
I mentioned Zlatan earlier. Are there any other names of characters or villains from MLS past that you can think of that were kind of fun for you?
Well, I'd love to know if anybody has villains right now. Now, obviously, this is partly dictated by who you support. So if you are on one side of a rivalry, a player on the other side could be a villain. I think there are MLS fans, diehards, who care very much about their teams, who think Lionel Messi is a villain in this league. Sure. I really do, which is, that is defensible on some level. But if we're going to say villains, I mean, I hate to do it because it feels like we're just, ganging up a little bit on the Mexican internationals that have played in this league. But Rafa Marquez was a villain in Major League Soccer. I go back and watch. He did something in a playoff game. Trying to remember what that was. He did something in a playoff game when he was with the Red Bulls that got him suspended the next year. That now I'm going to have to. It's in there somewhere. It's rattling around the back of my head. I'm going to have to go look at that. We got the big cheesy Mac saying Leonard on the earthquakes. There were a couple of quakes who were that is throwing it back a little bit. Stephen Lennart was part of the Bash Brothers the Quakes had. I think Alan Gordon was part of that for a little while.
Obviously, yeah, Alan Gordon's a good shout.
I mean, I think people thought of Alan Gordon as a bit of a villain. I would say that's probably fair. Man, there are some. I'm trying to think of some other figures that were villainous. And this is, again, there's a lot of ton that sort of jump out immediately that you're like, yeah, that guy, really hated that guy. He played this way or that way. There were some dirty players in Major League Soccer in the history. So I don't know. This is something the league has kind of missed on. I think managers as villains, like sort of they just naturally slide into that role if they are vocal, if they have egos, if they are successful on some level. You can't really be a villain if you're not successful because who cares about you? I mean, I think the league needs more of that stuff.
Do you think that maybe because of his success, do you think that Bruce Arena would be, a villain to some degree?
For sure. I think the way that Bruce carries himself, he's sort of like, well, whatever happens mentality rubs some people the wrong way. I think he can be gruff. I think he can be dismissive, particularly of reporters and questions and things like that. He is somewhat intimidating, Bruce Arena. So yeah, he could absolutely be a villain. I think Bob Bradley's an interesting one, by the way. Bob Bradley is kind of a gruff guy too, but I don't know that anybody really thought of him as a villain at any point. He was just kind of this really earnest, very intense dude that you're like, oh, okay, Bob. Go.
Who's asking those questions?
Yeah, that stuff
that comes immediately to mind. But yeah, I never was like put out by him. I like that he was a little bit abrasive and did things his way and didn't seem to at least publicly question his own methods. Like he was who he was. He was going to run his team like he was going to. And if you had something to say about that, he'd tell you to stuff it, so to speak. Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily make you a villain, but throw those in the chat, guys. If you have any more that come to mind, scanning our minds, trying to find the villains in MLS history. I guess to some degree, like some people view Messi that way. Maybe some people felt that way about Beckham back in the day.
Oh, absolutely. Well, remember, David Beckham arrived in Los Angeles and then acted like he didn't really want to be there, kept trying to leave, went on loan, didn't really put the effort in. Had a moment or two when he was on the road with the Galaxy. I think one famously happened in Kansas City where he had some interactions with fans that were not comfortable. So 100% David Beckham could rank as a villain. Now he's just a cologne salesman who gets excited about Messi goals, I guess. I don't know. What is his role? That David Beckham. He can't be is he a villain now while part of the Inter Miami family?
He's more of an ambassador, I would say now. I mean, does he do anything that really rubs people the wrong way? He's trying to ingratiate himself and his team as much as possible at this point, it seems.
Yeah, now he's memed when his documentary comes out and his wife is talking about her
Regular
her
grown
her
youth.
regular upbringing, and her husband pops his head in and says, "Wasn't it a Rolls Royce that you were going to school in?" So yeah, it's very
Yeah, him being funny is actually probably his most endearing moments. That moment, and then when he was on Ali G back in the day,
oh
that was a funny clip. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that,
well
but
yeah yeah.
thanks to everyone for joining us. Shout out to the viewers in the audience from the West Coast getting up extremely early to join the show live. Appreciate you guys out there. Thank you for following along. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. I'm as guilty as anyone. I watch a whole lot of YouTube. Don't hit the subscribe button, but now I'm on the inside. Recognize how darn important it is. Hit the subscribe button on the Morning Kicker on